My aunt forced her way into my life, uninvited. She pawned my mom's ring for cheap liquor. She crashed my car, laughing at the wreckage. Smoke filled my home as she stood there. I'm Emma, 32, living in a cozy little house in Portland, Oregon. It's the kind of place where the rain taps softly on the roof, and I've carved out a quiet life working as a graphic designer. My home was my sanctuary, until my Aunt Linda showed up and turned it upside down. One chilly October evening, I heard a loud knock at my door. I opened it to find Linda, my mom's older sister, standing there with 2 duffel bags and a smug grin. I'm staying here for a while, she announced, brushing past me without waiting for an invite. My stomach sank. I hadn't seen her in years, but I knew her reputation. She'd been kicked out of her last apartment in Salem for not paying rent and causing a scene. I stood in the doorway, my voice shaking. Linda, you can't just move in. This is my house. She spun around, her eyes narrowing. Oh, come on, Emma. We're family. You can't turn me away. Her tone was sharp, like I was the one being unreasonable. I tried to stand my ground, my hands clenched. You need to ask first. I'm not okay with this. But Linda just laughed, a cold, mocking sound, and dropped her bags on my living room floor. I'm not going anywhere, she said, her voice low, almost threatening. I froze. I'd heard stories about her temper, how she'd once smashed a neighbor's window in a fit of rage. My heart pounded, and I stepped back, letting her stay, just for the night, I told myself. The next morning, I woke to find her sprawled on my couch, already acting like she owned the place. She'd raided my fridge, leaving empty yogurt containers on the counter. My favorite coffee mug, a gift from my mom before she passed, was sitting in the sink, chipped. I felt a surge of anger but bit my tongue. I called my grandparents in Seattle, hoping they'd talk some sense into her. Emma, she's family, my grandma said softly. She's going through a rough patch. You have to help her. I gripped the phone, my knuckles white. They didn't get it. Linda wasn't just down on her luck, she was trouble. By the end of the first week, my home felt like a prison. Linda left dirty dishes everywhere, blasted music at midnight, and complained about my cheap furniture. I'd come home from work exhausted, only to find her lounging with a glass of my wine, not even bothering to hide it. I tried talking to her, my voice steady but firm. Linda, you can't treat my house like this. She just rolled her eyes. Relax, Emma. It's not a big deal. But it was. Every day, I felt smaller in my own space, like I was the guest and she was the queen. I lay awake at night, staring at the ceiling, wondering how I'd let this happen. My mom's voice echoed in my head, her warnings about Linda's selfishness. I should have listened. I should have locked the door that first night. But now she was here, and I had no idea how to get her out. The first week with Linda in my Portland home was bad, but the second week was a nightmare. I started noticing things disappearing. I kept $200 in my wallet for emergencies, tucked in a drawer in my bedroom. One morning, I checked, and it was gone. My heart sank as I rifled through the drawer, hoping I'd misplaced it. Deep down, I knew better. I marched to the living room where Linda was sprawled on my couch, scrolling through her phone. Linda, where's my money? I asked, my voice tight. She didn't even look up. What money? She said, her tone flat, like I was bothering her. I pressed harder, my hands shaking. The $200 from my drawer. It's gone. She shrugged, a smirk tugging at her lips. Maybe you spent it and forgot, Emma. Don't blame me. I knew she was lying. Her eyes flicked away, and her fingers tapped nervously on her phone. I wanted to scream, but I held back, my jaw clenched. I didn't have proof, and she knew it. The next day, I found my pantry raided. Found my favorite snacks, almond butter, granola bars, even the fancy chocolate I'd saved for a bad day were gone. Empty wrappers littered the counter. Linda didn't even try to hide it. She just sat there, munching on my last bag of chips, crumbs falling onto my rug. You need to buy better food, she said, not even looking at me. My blood boiled. I worked hard for everything in this house, and she was treating it like her personal buffet. Then came the wine. I'm not much of a drinker, but I kept a few bottles of Pinot Noir for special occasions, gifts from a client. One night, I came home to find 2 empty bottles on the kitchen counter, corks tossed carelessly on the floor. Linda was slouched in a chair, her cheeks flushed, a half-empty glass in her hand. This stuff's not bad, she slurred, raising the glass like a toast. I stared, my chest tight with rage. That was mine, I said, my voice low. She laughed, loud and mocking. Oh, come on, Emma. Sharing's caring, right? I wanted to snatch the glass from her hand, but her glassy eyes and unsteady sway made me pause. She was drunk, and I didn't trust her not to lash out. It got worse. Linda started inviting people over without asking. One evening, I came home from a long day at work to find 3 strangers in my living room, laughing and drinking my beer. The air reeked of cigarette smoke, and my coffee table was covered in sticky rings from their cans. Linda was in the middle of it all, giggling like a teenager. Emma, meet my friends, she said, as if I'd walked into her house. I stood frozen, my bag still slung over my shoulder. You can't just invite people here, I said, my voice shaking with barely controlled anger. She waved me off. Lighten up, they're just having fun. One of her friends smirked at me, like I was the intruder. I felt my face burn with humiliation. This was my home, my safe space, and she was turning it into a dive bar. I called my grandparents again, my hands trembling as I dialed their Seattle number. She's stealing from me, disrespecting my house, I said, my voice cracking. Please, tell her to stop. But my grandpa sighed. Emma, she's your aunt. She's family. You've got to be patient. I hung up, my throat tight. They didn't care. Nobody did. Linda knew she had them on her side, and she used it like a weapon. Every complaint I made about the mess, the theft, the stranger she brushed off with a smirk or a snide comment about me being uptight, my home felt like a battleground, and I was losing. Each night I lay awake, my stomach churning, wondering how much more I could take. I kept telling myself I'd find a way to get her out, but Linda was like a storm, tearing through my life, and I didn't know how to stop her. I thought I'd seen the worst of Linda, but I was wrong. 3 weeks into her invasion of my Portland home, I noticed something missing that cut deeper than the money or the wine. It was my mom's silver ring, a delicate band with a tiny sapphire, the last thing she gave me before she passed away. I kept it in a velvet box on my dresser, a sacred spot I checked every night. That morning, the box was empty. My heart stopped. I tore through my room, pulling out drawers, checking under the bed, praying I'd misplaced it. But I knew Linda had taken it. My hands shook as I stormed to the guest room where she was staying. She was sprawled on the bed, scrolling through her phone, empty wine glasses cluttering the nightstand. "Linda," I said, my voice sharp, "where's my mom's ring?" She didn't even flinch. "What ring?" she asked, her tone bored, like I was wasting her time. I stepped closer, my chest tight. "The silver ring on my dresser. It's gone, and you're the only one who's been in my room." She finally looked up, her eyes narrowing. "I borrowed it," she said casually, like it was no big deal. "I'll give it back later." My blood boiled. "You borrowed it?" I shouted. "That's my mom's ring. You had no right." She rolled her eyes, smirking. "God, Emma, chill. It's just a ring." I felt like I'd been slapped. That ring wasn't just jewelry, it was my mom, the woman who raised me, who loved me, who warned me about Linda's selfish streak. I demanded she give it back right then. Linda sighed, stood up, and rummaged through her bag. For a second, I thought she'd actually produce it. Instead, she shrugged. "Must have lost it," she said, her voice flat. I froze, my stomach churning. "Lost it?" I whispered. She nodded, like it was nothing. "Yeah, I wore it out last night. Maybe it fell off at the bar." My vision blurred with tears and rage. "You wore it to a bar?" I screamed. "You sold it, didn't you?" Her silence was all the answer I needed. She'd pawned it, probably for another bottle of cheap vodka. I felt sick, my hands trembling as I thought of that ring, my mom's ring in some pawn shop, gone forever. I grabbed my phone and dialed my grandparents in Seattle. "Linda stole mom's ring," I said, my voice breaking. "She sold it. You have to do something." My grandma's voice was soft, infuriatingly calm. "Emma, she's your aunt. She's struggling. You can't just accuse her." I gripped the phone, tears streaming down my face. "She admitted it. She took it," my grandpa chimed in, his tone stern. "Family helps family, Emma. You need to forgive her." I hung up, my chest heaving. Forgive her? She'd stolen the last piece of my mom, and they were defending her. I went back to Linda, my voice low but steady. "You're leaving. Now." She laughed, a cold, mocking sound. "Good luck with that. I'm not going anywhere." She crossed her arms, daring me to try. I wanted to drag her out myself, but I remembered her history, her temper, the stories of her breaking things when she didn't get her way. My heart pounded as I backed away, feeling smaller in my own home than ever. That night, I couldn't sleep. I sat on my bed, clutching the empty velvet box, my mom's face flashing in my mind. I felt betrayed, not just by Linda, but by my grandparents, who kept enabling her. My home, my sanctuary, was a war zone. Every creak of the floorboards made me jump, wondering what Linda would take next. I knew I had to act, but I felt so alone. My mom's ring was gone, and with it, a piece of my heart. I wasn't sure how much more I could take, but I swore to myself I'd find a way to end this. Linda wasn't just a guest anymore, she was a thief, and I was done letting her win. The loss of my mom's ring left me raw, but Linda wasn't done tearing my life apart. A month into her stay in my Portland home, things hit a new low. I woke up one Tuesday morning, my head pounding from another sleepless night, and headed outside to drive to work. My car, a reliable blue Honda I'd paid off last year, was gone. My heart stopped. I stood in my empty driveway, the cold Oregon air biting my skin, and checked again, thinking maybe I'd parked on the street. Nothing. My hands shook as I pulled out my phone and called Linda, who was still inside, probably passed out on my couch. No answer. I dialed again, my stomach twisting. Still nothing. I called the police, my voice trembling as I reported my car stolen. "It's a blue 2018 Honda Civic," I said, pacing my front yard. "It was in my driveway last night." The officer asked if anyone else had access to my keys. My blood ran cold. Linda. She'd been eyeing my keyring for days, always making snide comments about how I didn't need such a nice car. I told the officer about her, my words spilling out her drinking, her thefts, her refusal to leave. They promised to look into it and told me to stay put. 2 hours later, my phone rang. It was the police. "We found your car, ma'am," the officer said, his tone grim. "It's totaled. Crashed into a utility pole on Burnside Street." My knees buckled. I sank onto my front steps, the world spinning. "Was it my aunt?" I asked, already knowing the answer. "Yes," he said. "Linda Carter. She was driving, intoxicated. We've arrested her for DUI and vehicle theft." I closed my eyes, anger and relief crashing together. My car, my freedom, my hard-earned pride was gone. But at least she was in custody. I took an Uber to the scene in downtown Portland. The sight made my chest ache. My Honda was a mangled wreck, its front end crumpled against a pole, glass scattered across the pavement. A crowd had gathered, whispering, staring. The officer on scene handed me a report, his face sympathetic. "She's lucky she didn't hurt anyone," he said. Breathalyzer showed she was way over the limit. I nodded, too numb to speak. Linda had taken my car without a word, driven drunk through the city, and destroyed it. I wanted to scream, to demand answers, but she was already at the station, probably spinning another sob story. I called my grandparents in Seattle, my hands shaking with rage. "Linda stole my car," I said, my voice cracking. "She crashed it. It's gone." I waited for them to finally see her for what she was. Instead, my grandma sighed. "Oh, Emma, she's just lost right now. You need to help her through this." I nearly dropped the phone. "Help her?" I shouted. "She destroyed my car. She's been stealing from me for weeks." My grandpa cut in, his voice stern. "She's family. Bail her out. She needs you." I hung up, tears burning my eyes. They were blind to her chaos, and I was done begging for their support. The next morning, Linda was back. My grandparents had bailed her out, and there she was, standing on my porch with that same smug grin. "I'll pay you back," she said, brushing past me like nothing had happened. My jaw dropped. Pay me back? I snapped. You totaled my car. You're not welcome here. She laughed, tossing her bag on my couch. Relax, Emma. It's just a car. I stood there, shaking, as she raided my fridge again. My neighbors peeked out their windows, drawn by her loud voice. I felt humiliated, trapped in my own home. I told her to leave, my voice firm, but she just smirked. You can't make me, she said, crossing her arms. I have rights. I was using a rental car now, my insurance barely covering the cost. Every time I saw it parked outside, I felt a pang of loss for my Honda. Linda acted like it was no big deal, lounging around, drinking my coffee, leaving messes. I called a lawyer that afternoon, my hands still trembling. I need her out, I said. She's destroying my life. The lawyer explained the eviction process slow, tedious, but possible. I felt a flicker of hope, but also dread. Linda wasn't going to go quietly. I lay awake that night, my heart racing, knowing she was still in my house, plotting her next move. My home wasn't mine anymore, and I was running out of time to take it back. Linda's car crash pushed me to my limit, but I still wasn't prepared for what came next. I was barely holding it together in my Portland home, now a shadow of the sanctuary it once was. The eviction process had started, but it was slow, and Linda knew it. She strutted around my house like she owned it, her smug grin a constant reminder of my powerlessness. I was driving a rental car, my savings drained from covering the costs, and every day felt like a countdown to her next disaster. Then, one night, she pushed me too far. It was past midnight when a sharp, acrid smell jolted me awake. Smoke. My heart pounded as I leapt out of bed, my bare feet hitting the cold floor. I ran down the hall, the air growing thick and hazy. The kitchen was a nightmare. Flames licked up from the stove where a pan of grease had caught fire. Black smoke billowed, stinging my eyes. Linda stood there, swaying, a bottle of my whiskey in one hand, her eyes glassy. Oops, she slurred, giggling like it was a joke. My blood ran cold. She'd been cooking drunk at midnight and nearly set my house on fire. I grabbed the fire extinguisher from under the sink, my hands shaking as I sprayed foam over the flames. The fire hissed and died, but the damage was done. The stove was charred, the counter scorched, and the air reeked of burnt grease. My kitchen, where I'd spent mornings sipping coffee and sketching designs, was ruined. I turned to Linda, my voice trembling with rage. You could have killed us, I screamed. She shrugged, stumbling against the counter. You're so dramatic, Emma, she said, her words slurring. It's just a little mess. You stressed me out, so I needed to eat. I couldn't believe it. She'd nearly burned my house down and she was blaming me? My chest tightened, panic mixing with fury. I grabbed my phone and called 911, my voice shaking but firm. My aunt started a fire in my kitchen, I told the dispatcher. She's drunk and out of control. Please, send someone. Linda's eyes widened, her smirk fading. You're calling the cops on me? She snapped, stepping toward me. I backed away, my heart racing. I'd seen her temper before, heard stories of her smashing things in a rage. For a moment, I thought she might lunge at me. The police arrived 10 minutes later, their flashing lights cutting through the dark. I led them to the kitchen, where Linda was slumped in a chair, muttering to herself. The officers took one look at the scorched stove and the whiskey bottle and started questioning her. She turned on the tears, her voice shaking. I'm just trying to survive, she sobbed. Emma's kicking me out for no reason. I stood there, my fists clenched, as she spun her lies. But this time, I wasn't backing down. She stole my car, crashed it, and now this, I said, my voice steady despite the tears in my eyes. She's dangerous. The officers exchanged glances, then inspected the damage. One of them pulled me aside. This is serious, he said. We're taking her in for reckless endangerment and property damage. Relief flooded me, but it was short-lived. As they cuffed Linda, she lost it, screaming, You're ruining my life, Emma. You're nothing without me. Her words stung, but I held my ground, watching as they led her to the patrol car. The neighbors' lights flicked on, their faces pressed against windows, but I didn't care. I was done with her chaos. The next morning, my kitchen was a wreck, black soot on the walls, the smell of smoke clinging to everything. I called my lawyer, my hands still shaking. Speed up the eviction, I said. I can't wait anymore. He promised to push it through, but warned me it could still take weeks. I felt trapped, even with Linda gone for now. My grandparents called that afternoon, their voices dripping with disappointment. How could you do this to her? My grandma said. She's your aunt. She needs you. I gripped the phone, my jaw tight. She almost burned my house down, I said. I'm done. They kept talking, but I hung up, my heart heavy, but resolute. Linda wasn't my responsibility anymore. I stood in my ruined kitchen, the weight of her destruction sinking in. I'd fought for my home, but the battle wasn't over. I knew she'd try to come back, and I had to be ready. The fire in my kitchen was the end of the line. With Linda finally arrested, I thought I'd feel free, but the fallout wasn't over. My Portland home was a mess, scorched walls, a ruined stove, and the lingering smell of smoke. I was exhausted, my savings drained from the rental car and repairs. The eviction process was moving, but too slowly, and I braced myself for more chaos. Then, my grandparents showed up. They drove from Seattle the day after Linda's arrest, storming into my house without so much as a knock. You're tearing this family apart, Emma, my grandpa barked, his face red. Your aunt needs help, and you're throwing her to the wolves. I stood in my living room, my arms crossed, my heart pounding. Help? I snapped. She stole my mom's ring, totaled my car, and nearly burned my house down. My grandma shook her head, her voice soft but cutting. She's your family. You don't abandon family. I wanted to scream. They hadn't seen the empty wine bottles, the charred kitchen, the smug grin Linda wore every time she crossed a line. I took a deep breath, my voice steady. I'm done. She's not my responsibility. If you care so much, take her in yourselves. They stared, stunned, but I didn't back down. For the first time, I felt the weight of their guilt-tripping slip away. I walked them to the door, my hands shaking, but my resolve firm. Don't come back unless you respect my boundaries, I said. They left without a word, their car peeling out of my driveway. That night, I blocked their numbers. It hurt cutting off the only family I had left, but I couldn't keep living under their toxic loyalty to Linda. The next day, I filed for a restraining order against her. The lawyer called to confirm the eviction was finalized. Linda was barred from my property, and the restraining order ensured she couldn't come near me. I stood in my quiet house, the silence almost deafening after weeks of chaos. My mom's ring was gone, my car was totaled, and my kitchen was a wreck, but I felt something new: freedom. I wasn't the scared woman who let Linda push her way in. I'd fought back, set boundaries, and reclaimed my life. It wasn't easy. I mourned the family I thought I had, the grandparents who chose Linda's lies over me, but I knew I'd made the right choice. Weeks later, I got a call from the police. Linda had been sentenced to 6 months for reckless endangerment and property damage. I exhaled, relief washing over me. My home was mine again. I started repairing the kitchen, painting over the soot, replacing the stove. Each step felt like erasing her presence. I hung a new photo of my mom on the wall, a reminder of her strength, not Linda's betrayal. I was done letting anyone walk over me. For the first time in months, I slept through the night, the rain tapping softly on my roof. I was free, and I'd never let anyone take that away again.